Hello everybody, welcome to Creative Chess channel, and today we're going to speak about the endgame and how to improve it. First, I would like to show you the examples taken from the games of Magnus Carlsen, of young Magnus when he was 14 and 16. We'll have a look at his mistakes, and you should understand first of all that we can learn how to play endgame while analyzing our own games and analyzing the games of the best chess players in the world. So, first game which I want to show you was played between Magnus Carlsen and Levon Aronen. Magnus was playing white. It happened in 2004. Magnus was already, of course, a GM, but a young GM. He was only 14 years old. Magnus was playing white. You see his check is given, and he needed to retreat either to g4, maybe to g2, to f2. Let's have a look at the position in general. We know that h-pawn and f-pawn pawns are worse than, for example, f-pawn and g-pawn. So they are not connected. That's why for white it was possible to play for a draw. But please, guys, remember, in these pawns, when your opponent has such pawns and you have a weaker side, the best squares for the king is either g2 or f2. So not g4, but g2 or f2. So it was, for example, logical to play king to g2 and trying to stop this pawn and to block it. But what Magnus did in this game, instead of blocking h-pawn, he decided to play king g4. He got a tricky idea in mind concerning the stalemate. I'll show you. Levon Aronen played h3, and now so Magnus came with another bad move, which is rook to g5. It seems that the move is beautiful, yeah, but okay, of course black wouldn't take because it's stalemate. You see white doesn't have any squares to move, yeah. But it was very stupid to hope that Levon Aronen wouldn't notice this idea, and of course he didn't take the rook, he just retreated to f7. And what happened? Here you see the rook isn't on the good square, and instead of this move, you should have played the rook to a2, trying to stop the pawn from here. And for example, f5 could be followed, king f4, rook to b8, for example, rook a6, king h5. And again, so the king needs to block the pawn, and it's still possible to end the game in a draw. But you see he played rook to g5, Aronen played king f7, rook to h5. Seems that everything is fine, but now the problem for white is that they can't take the pawn. So why? Let's have a look. So actually it was black to move. Black played king to e6, and unfortunately for white they can't go for the pawn endgame because it's lost, completely lost. You see king e5, for example, can be played, and it's easily winning for black. Don't forget that the king should be in front of the pawn, and for example something like that, and you see the pawn is going and is going to promote. So this is the problem, yes, that now white can't take the pawn. So that's why they have to wait. So rook c3, king f4, king f7. Aronen didn't notice a good idea here for black. It was possible to play rook to c2. So why? It seems that we are given a pawn, but again, it's impossible to take it because we make check. And when the king retreats, again the same story. We are coming for pawn endgame, and again winning it. So that's why here it was already possible, because of the not very nice allocation of the king. It was possible just to play rook to c2. Of course, I told you already that the king shouldn't be here, should blocking the pawn. Okay, but Ronan didn't notice first this idea. He noticed it later. King g6, they're dancing around, and finally rook c2. The same story, white can't take the pawn because of the check, and rook goes back, exchanging the rooks. So king g3, h2. You see the pawn is closer and closer to the promotion. Now white has to control this. Goes, and have a look how Ronan very skillfully is winning. He is going to make such maneuver and come to the pawn from this side, because you see we can't use the short way because of the king. That's why he had to make this loop and then to come and support this pawn. That's a very nice idea, also keep it in mind. You see white is checking, and here after king to c2, white just resigned. So we may have a look how the game could proceed, but it's actually already very easy. Just imagine that white is standing, but black just approaching. If, for example, check, then we go back, and rook f2 is winning. So black can't go this way because we'll just play rook g2 and king g1, promoting the pawn. That's why they would have played rook king e3, and you see here already black is winning, and we can promote the pawn. So here Magnus made quite a childish mistake. Instead of going and keeping on the squares, keeping his king on the squares, he decided to play for a stalemate, to have the stalemate ideas in mind. But of course, Ronan isn't that silly just to take and to stalemate the opponent. Instead, he just put, you see, Magnus put his king into a very bad square. The king couldn't block the pawn, and then Ronan made this very interesting idea and helped the pawn. Yeah, but it wasn't the only mistake which was made by Magnus Carlsen. So you see, here he is already 16, and again playing black against Levona Ronan. He's playing black, and it is his move. And here you see that actual position is drawish. How to draw it for black? It's quite easy. You just need to keep just to play, for example, rook e3, just not to go away from the pawn. So then you can draw it this position. For example, let's imagine that rook e3 and for example king d6, king goes to f7. We don't allow so the pawn to approach. And if, for example, rook goes to d7, we go to e8. And then if d6 pawn is going, so then we can make checks, and it's complete draw. But instead of keeping to this pawn, Magnus decided to use another drawish idea, just to check from the distance, from the long side, trying to check. But it was also drawish, but he made a blunder and lost his position. Let's have a look how the game proceeded. Sorry, it's not this. So he played rook to a1. He's going to make checks from the long side. Ronan played king e7, rook a5, and here came the blunder. See, he played rook to a8. It's still a draw, but when Ronan played rook to d6, he made a terrible mistake. He played rook to a7. Here, in this case, he shouldn't leave this file, this rank, and he should have stayed there. The only move which led to a draw here was king to g6. Instead, he played rook a7. It may seem to us what is the difference, but here see king goes to e8, and after check we just put rook to d8. And now, of course, it's impossible to exchange the rooks because our pawn will promote. If we go here, again, it's lost because we exchange the rooks like this. And if, let us say, attack the pawn, then white can just play e7, some king f6, is leading to disaster. If not to play king f6, okay, let's play rook a7, then rook goes to g3, rook a8. You see white is already ready to promote the pawn, rook a6, rook d6, and after rook d8, black can resign because you see the pawn is promoting. He can give us 1000 checks, but white king is approaching and white is ready to promote the pawn. So here, again, in the drawer's position, Magnus Carlsen lost. And I also want to show you one very short position where Magnus lost also in drawish position. So the game was like this. Magnus was 15 at that time. 15, he was playing against Pedersen. Magnus was playing black. He was trying to defend this endgame, rook versus bishop. It's very often a draw, but black needs to play precisely, and here Magnus lost only in 2 moves. First of all, guys, remember if you're playing for a weaker side, you need to go to the corner. If you're already in the corner, if there is an option to which corner to run, better run to the corner opposite to the color of your bishop. So your bishop is a dark square bishop, that's why you should run to the opposite color. So this move would have been the best one. But instead, Magnus played king h5. His opponent played king f5, and here Magnus made a terrible mistake. He played bishop to d8. Guys, so please find a way for white to win here. It's very, very easy. Yeah, so white played only one move, rook to c8, and black resigned. So why? Because you see checkmate is coming. If, for example, to play like this, check here, and white just need to make some move like this. For example, we are waiting for the king to go away, and it's 2-1, and black is losing. Yeah, you see, but so when Magnus was young, he also could do a lot of mistakes, but hard work on the endgame made him the best endgame player in the world. So guys, I mean that I want to start studying endgame, teaching you endgame, and studying myself at the same time. So guys, thanks for watching me. Please subscribe to my YouTube chess channel. Let's study chess together. See you in my next videos, and bye bye.